everyone. So this is part 3 of Sex, Gender, and Sexuality. Hopefully you have already watched parts 1 and 2, and now this is part 3. This should be the final one. I know you're thinking, well, in the first 2 we only got through like 5 slides each. However, for this last one, if you skimmed the PowerPoint, you realize like there's a lot of photos, so we'll be able to go through those really quickly. I didn't get through as much as I thought I would on the first, especially on the second one. But I don't want to leave anything out, and there's a lot. Like I said, like I mentioned before, in class, like I would have spent probably 4 days. I remember one semester we spent even more longer than that. So like I said, there's a lot to this section, but I like to kind of put it all in one PowerPoint because there's a lot of the stuff's interconnected. And it's definitely a topic that I think most of the students, obviously you guys have more to say about it, which is always, good. Anyway, okay, so this is part 3, and this should be the last part, at least per the syllabus. I only, set aside 3 days. If you saw me or heard me rambling in the first 2, I thought maybe I'll do it in 2 videos like that. I don't even know why I even bothered wasting my breath. I always know I'm going to ramble and talk more, and it was definitely going to take at least 3, but you never know. Okay. So let's just get right back into it. We left off, I think slide 17 was the last slide we talked about on part 2, so we'll go right into slide 18. As I was reviewing the video and from part 2 and the PowerPoint, I realized there's a few things that I didn't say that I wanted to say, but I feel like for the most part I said everything that I want you guys to take away from it. And I think based on some of the questions that I asked you, like those, like food for thought questions, that hopefully at least you have thought about a lot of this in different ways, which is, the point. So even if I didn't maybe explicitly say every little thing I wanted to say, I feel like for the most part I said most of it in general, and you probably in your own minds were able to take a lot away from it. Okay, so let's just go right into slide 18. Okay, so this is types of relationships. So, as we're talking about sex and gender and sexuality, obviously we know those things can be separated out into different discussions, but also there's a lot of overlap, which, like I said, is why I have included them all into the same, PowerPoint. So keeping it, with that discussion, types of relationships. So we talked about this a little bit before when we talked about sexual dimorphism, then when we're talking about humans as primates or as mammals, thinking about in biology and nature, that when we see a sexually dimorphic species like humans, typically what this means is that the natural social system is not monogamy. Typically when we see monogamy or lifelong monogamy, the species are what we call monomorphic, or you can't tell the difference between males and females based on secondary sex characteristics or large size or shape differences. So I think I gave you guys the example before. For primates, at least gibbons are a really good example. They are monogamous, but you can't tell the difference between males and females based on size. There will be different sizes because there's just going to be natural variation. Sometimes males will be bigger, sometimes females will be bigger. You can't map it onto color. It doesn't matter if one's a slightly lighter color or darker color. That doesn't imply male or female. There will just be variation in those traits. You have to literally look at their genitalia to be able to tell. In contrast, humans, chimps, gorillas, as a more extreme example, you can tell based on those secondary sex characteristics. But anyway, I know I mentioned that briefly to you guys before, looking at the social systems of monogamy, polygyny, polyandry, or being... Hi baby, what's wrong? Just looking for something. What are you looking for? Did you want to say hi? Oh yeah? Come here. There you go. Look, okay, say hi. Say hi to everybody. She's like, what are you doing? I got these cute sweaters, I don't know if you can see, with skulls on them. Oh my gosh. You probably saw it in the background, but she's been super cuddly today. You okay? What's wrong? Okay. Look. You say hi? Say I'm the cutest doggy. I'm the cutest doggy. You're so pretty. I'm gonna put you down, okay? No? Okay. Good girl. Over here, baby. Okay. Okay. She's got to have all the attention. Oh, no, she's going to sit in the background, probably pout or something. Okay. relationship. Okay, so like I said, we talked about this before, like from that evolutionary perspective, but kind of taking that conversation and going, talking about it in terms of like the cultural factors, obviously, which is like more pertinent to this course. We can start kind of talking about the stuff I have listed. So obviously monogamy, but more in the well, not that this hasn't happened in previously in history, but I would say it's a lot more. I think people are more open about it now. I would say maybe in the last decade, I think I've heard, way more open conversations about this. It's definitely more like a little more mainstream than it was before. People saying like they're in a polyamorous relationship, they're in an open relationship. And this gets back to, I'm sorry, I'm like a nose, like a dog hair. Oh, damn it, okay. I keep losing my train of thought. This idea, humans are not naturally monogamous. And I think I mentioned this to you guys before, that humans are really good at serial monogamy. So because this actually maps on like perfectly well to our level of sexual dimorphism, that we don't have an extreme amount of dimorphism like gorillas, but we're not monomorphic like gibbons. We're kind of somewhere in between. And so kind of having a social like system is sort of in between. We're not, polygynous, we're not monogamous, but having something in between. Oh my God. I don't want to pick my nose the whole lecture, but I like definitely had a waffle here. Okay. So having a social system in between. So like I said, humans are really good at serial monogamy. So being monogamous, like being in a relationship with one other person and not cheating on them, not having any extra relationships, and, being faithful to that one person, but only being with that person maybe for a short period of time. So you might be with someone for 5 years, maybe you're with the next person for 2 years. You're monogamous with those people, but then you move on to another relationship. Humans, in different populations are really good at this. So, but keeping in mind this idea we talked about, humans not being naturally monogamous, like as primates, as mammals, we're not. No surprise, most of you, and like if I asked you guys this in a class setting, how many of you have either cheated on someone, been cheated on, or know someone, like pretty much every single person would probably raise their hand, right? Now, don't confuse what I'm saying, like, oh, this excuses it, of course not. And I think I mentioned this to you guys earlier in the semester a couple times, I think. We can, look at a specific human behavior and say, oh, this kind of explains why this might be happening to some degree in these like larger like evolutionary or biological I blanked on the word I was going to use terms, but that doesn't excuse the behavior. Obviously we still are individuals in the world with ethical, moral, personal responsibilities, obviously. So it's no surprise that being unfaithful is rampant in like cross-culturally. That doesn't excuse that. Like obviously we can explain evolutionarily. It doesn't mean that it's now like something you have an excuse for. I hope that makes sense to you guys, that we can, and this is true for a handful of the topics we'll talk about in this class, like we can understand something doesn't mean we're excusing it away just because we can understand why it's happening. Okay, so anyway, but getting back to this, and this is why it's taken 3 parts to do this lecture, because this is how I ramble about everything. I just want to make sure I'm clear with you guys about all these little things. Okay, anyway, so back to the first slide we're on. Looking at, polyamorous relationships or open relationships, and if we were in class, I would ask if anyone would like to share. Obviously, we can't do that. In previous semesters when I've taught this, like in class, though, I've definitely have had students share their experiences being like in a polyamorous relationship, being in an open relationship to varying degrees, whether like the positive outcomes, the negative, which is true for like any type of relationship. There's going to be pros and cons to it. But like I said, I think we're seeing more people being open to this idea. Sometimes long term, sometimes short term, but it's definitely more of a conversation. I'm hearing more from different couples. We started an open relationship, or we've talked about it, we thought about it, we decided not to, or we decided to try it. Or people who are just like, I'm not into monogamy at all, I've never really been monogamous, but then of course there's a difference between, what is referred to as like ethical non-monogamy versus, obviously cheating on someone's two very different things. If you are entering a relationship with someone saying, look, I'm not going to be exclusive with you, and you're open and honest about that, obviously that's very different from saying, hey, I'm going to be exclusive with you, and then, lying and betraying that person. So 2 very different things. Okay. Let's see. Let's just move on to the next slide. Okay, so slide 19. A little bit more about gender, which we talked about like at the very beginning in part 1. Understanding when we're talking about gender as this concept of these rules or regulations or expectations put on someone, whether they are male or female. Like, what are those social rules? What are those social expectations? Oftentimes, they can be very detrimental or dangerous, depending on, often more for women than for men, but not always. And obviously, depending on the particular population, the particular cultural experience, they're going to be less or more skewed this way or that way, depending on that. But you can see here from the list, this idea of what are these behaviors that we're expected to have, how we also then not just looking at it introspectively, but also like how do we as individuals treat other people based on whether they are male or female? What are those like gendered expectations we have of them? Like positive and negative. What are the stereotypes we associate with being either male or female? And then of course in class we would have an amazing discussion about this. But I've already mentioned a few things, and you guys did a really good job, I think, on those discussion prompts, talking about this in a bit more detail, about at least some of the sexual behaviors, some of those expectations that we have about males or females. And like I said, you guys pointed out one that, one of them could be as a woman in our society that, not being sexual is kind of expected, like you're not supposed to want it. A handful of you had mentioned something like that, or if you're a male, it's kind of the opposite. But also, I think I mentioned this before, and this kind of gets to this question kind of in the middle part of the PowerPoint or slide where it says, what does it mean to be feminine? What does it mean to be masculine? Like in our culture, what does that mean? And so, we often, when we think of like, what does it mean to be feminine? What does it mean to be masculine? We think of those extreme examples of like what we call like hyper-masculinity or hyper-femininity. So typically, like if I asked you, now you may not agree with this, but socially we could say, okay, this is kind of like the social standard that most people would say is probably the standard of being feminine or the standard of being masculine. And it's going to be a combination of probably physical attributes and like behavioral attributes. So you could say like, and I think a few of you mentioned this in the prompt about being like ladylike, maybe not having a very strong opinion about things, being more maybe quiet in social setting as a woman, like the feminine expectations, maybe you don't curse, that's not ladylike, you and I think I mentioned this also to you guys before, expectations if you're a female that you want to be a mother, that you are good with children. And of course, like as we're listing these things, then we can list the male things too. Like, as a male, you're supposed to be, really good at sports, or you're supposed to be sexually promiscuous as a positive, or you're supposed to be, really good at fixing cars. Like all these things we know are like stereotypes, right? And we can, list for males and for females these hyper-masculine or hyper-feminine things that we could say society says, like these are the things that we should kind of be striving towards. But we all recognize that those things that's not really accurate. Like no one really fits that, right? No one really fits that hyper-masculine or hyper-feminine standard. We're all kind of somewhere in between in multiple ways, whether it's our behavior, whether it's like our physical attributes, that none of us are going to fit that. And so, I mean, this is the case for so many things that we've talked about in this class so far, that there's often this like social standard that no one really fits. And but when we talk about gender, it can be a lot more. It can permeate our lives in so much more complex ways. And so, like I said, giving the example for women, that you're expected to be a mother, you're expected to be good with children, you're expected to, wear certain like pink, you're expected to wear dresses more. But like I said before, like no one really fits that. So, I don't know what's going on with her. Waffle, what's up? I just walked them, so I should pee twice. I know she doesn't have to go to the bathroom. Are you just restless? Why don't you just sit right there, okay? Chill out. Chillax. Okay, good girl. Okay. I think that's kind of all I want to say on this one. Like you guys are, I'm assuming most of you are definitely familiar with this, these expectations and rules that are placed on us, based on whether you are a male or a female. And like I mentioned before, that this, like in part 1, at the very beginning of this PowerPoint, was that, there are kind of different ways of looking at what gender is. Historically, for the most part, especially in academia, we have addressed it in this way, that it's like gender as a practice, as an expectation, as a rule, that's often, has a negative consequences, whether you're male or female. Now, in the last maybe decade or so, we're seeing a new kind of use of the term in terms of like gender identity, which is like a very separate thing. Although like there's obviously overlap, but it's definitely a different way. Like we look at it a different way in terms of like anthropologically or academically. So I understand that. Okay. So to kind of go off this idea, like what are these expectations? What are these rules? What are these stereotypes that are placed on you, whether you're a male or a female? Like some can be positive, some often they're negative. And like I said, for the most part, no one is going to fit them. And like, so I have, now we're going to get into the picture. I have a lot of pictures to kind of talk about this. And also remember, cross-culturally, they will be different, So let's just move on. We'll just go through these slides. Slide 20. Do you need help? Oh, baby. Do you need help on that chair? Okay. Come on. Oi. Okay. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay. You okay? Hang on. What's wrong? Yeah. Oh, what's wrong? Okay, I'm not sure. She's just in a mood. She's looking at me. I don't know if you guys can see her. I don't even know if you guys can see. Oops, let's see, can you see? You see her face? She's mad at me. I like fuck up my camera. Okay. Okay. Oh, she's mad. Okay. Anyway, back to not my life. Back to, the actual class. Okay. So we're just gonna go through these pictures. I'll make comments about them, but for the most part, I'm expecting you, as you go through these, just kind of react in whatever way I'm assuming you're gonna react. Why is the lighting suddenly weird? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so slide 20, we see adult men, hand in hand, walking down the street, probably really good friends. And this is something like cross-culturally, some would say completely acceptable, normal behavior among adult men, but not so much, here, definitely not the norm. In fact, if you think about like what are the masculine expectations in our culture, we would say something like being like physically affectionate is like a negative. But then when you, obviously for any of these, when you start picking it apart, you're like, well, why is it a negative? Like it shouldn't be. Obviously, if you're an adult, you should be able to express affection and friendship, whether you're a male or a female. Like it shouldn't matter. And like for a lot of these, we see, generationally, we're seeing these trends like it's not as big of a deal anymore. Like if most of you being young, probably look at this and be like, oh, like not a big deal. Versus like if you asked your parents, they'd be like, something's weird's going on, Okay. Slide 21, we have two women and one of them spitting. So this would be go under that category for, like not being very ladylike. But most of us know we probably have all spit at some point. Now spitting in public, we could say like, that's not even a gendered issue. That's like, a health issue, or like especially now, obviously it could be something very different. But when you think about who spits more in public or when it's more acceptable, definitely female spitting in public would definitely be like something you'd notice more. Oh, so I have a point about that. Not spitting, but it just reminded me. So when I was in Ethiopia last year, so like obviously I stood out being white, and I'm tall. Like I know you guys always see me sitting. I'm 5'10". I'm quite tall, and most of the Ethiopians, like they're not naturally that tall, and so like not only was I much taller, but I obviously different skin, blonde, and then the colleague I was with, she was shorter, but she has like bright red hair. She dyes it, and so we both just stood out. And like just walking down the street. So at the hotel we were staying at to the museum where we worked, we were there like 2 weeks. But it was maybe like a 3-block walk. So we like obviously we're not gonna get a taxi, or like we just walked, because it took all of like 10 minutes to walk there. And of course every morning we get looked at, and people would stop, and everyone there was very friendly. So a lot of times people would, and a lot of them speak English, so they would talk and they'd want to talk to us in English to kind of practice their English. We had that happen quite a few times, which is very cool. And like I said, everyone there's extremely friendly, and at least where we were, But there was a point. But smoking. So this is the thing: is a lot of people smoke there, like, I mean, like in most populations, like a lot of people smoke. Like I'm a smoker, you know, I definitely smoke cigarettes, and but for them, like a female smoking, especially in public, like you just don't do it and you don't see it. And so she was a smoker too. So every morning when we'd walk, you know, to work for the 10 minutes, we would smoke a cigarette. And because we're outside, you know, it's not illegal or anything. We'd smoke a cigarette, and that was the thing people noticed more and commented on, that it was like we weren't being, like it wasn't appropriate that we were women smoking in public. Versus here, you know, especially like if you're like on the strip, walking down the street smoking, whatever, or just anywhere smoking, like, you know, smokers, males and females, like like you probably wouldn't think twice if you saw a woman smoking a cigarette versus a man smoking a cigarette. You probably wouldn't even enter your mind that there's like a difference, like it's not really something in our culture, but there it absolutely was. So we definitely were, you know, she and I had conversations about that. Like that was the thing that people had a problem with the most. So it was interesting. Okay. So I'm like, we're just going to go through these quickly as I comment for 10 minutes about each slide. Okay, so go to slide 22. So this is one I found recently looking at, like, and I hear this a lot, like for women, that we are often kind of the representative of all women in anything. Like if we're bad at, especially if you're bad at something, then somehow it's like, well, oh, you, like, let's say, take me for example, like I'm not good at, I can't even think of an example, whatever I'm not good at. And suddenly, oh, well, you know, women aren't good at that, like that. But we see this a lot with a lot of examples. So here you see, you know, this example of they're doing math and two males, and someone's like, oh, you're not very good at math. But the next one, it's a male and a female, and then the man says to the female, like, oh, well, girls suck at math. Like somehow we're representative. And this could definitely be taken in the other direction too, that depending on what we're talking about, that you might have women saying to men, well, men aren't very good at blah, 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 because they might have an example of one or two men not being good at that particular thing. So this goes either way, in either direction, that these gendered expectations, we often make, you know, these broad generalizations about groups, whether you're male or female, based on, you know, whether one male or one female of that group does it well or doesn't do it well. So, slide 23. So this kind of gets into the language we use for males and females, especially when we're young. We have expressions, like, you know, like boys will be boys is definitely one. And when we hear that, like, we probably hear that a lot. Like I have definitely heard that in my life multiple times, whether you're a child or like even, you know, adolescent into an adult, that there is like kind of this pass given to males, whether they're children or adults, like, wow, it's just the way they are, they can't really help it. But then, like, what does that do? Like, what does that do when you don't have reasonable expectations for that whole, like, half of the population? Like, they can't help it that they're whatever, you know, stupid, or they can't help it that they're slow learners of whatever, they can't help it that they're doing reckless behavior. Like, we aren't requiring a lot of them when we have expressions like that, you know. But also, like, and of course, obviously, I forgot to even say it because it's so obvious that, of course, we know that all men aren't like that. So what does it say for the men who are like, well, wait a minute, I'm, you know, responsible person in the world, I'm not doing all these reckless behaviors, I'm not stupid. So why are there these expressions that kind of make it seem like that's how we all are, when of course we're not. So but to the point of this slide right here, that a lot of these expressions we have, especially for children, for the difference for males and females, and the point of this post is showing that for a lot of these expressions, especially when you're children, that it seems as if there's a lot more freedom when you are a male child and a lot more restrictions when you are a female child. And so culturally, when you have that stuff that you're learning as a young child, you're going to carry that into, you know, being a teenager, being a young adult, being a full adult. And that's those gendered expectations, you know, good and bad, positive and negative, are going to affect you the rest of your life, you know, based on that very specific cultural experience. Just considering like the language we use and the expressions that we have. Okay, so slide 24 and 25 was a study done. I'm just going to skip that for now. I really want to get into more of these ads. The ads. Okay. Some of these are funny and, well, you know. So slide 26, we have Dr. Pepper 10. It's not for women. Okay, so like I had to look into this. So apparently Dr. Pepper, the main customer of Dr. Pepper are females. And like I always think of my mom, that's like her favorite soda. I like Dr. Pepper, but she's like, she loves it. But apparently that's a thing. And so I guess Dr. Pepper was like trying to get more men to buy their product. Because obviously you want more people to buy your product, you know. And so they had, I don't know if you guys remember this, they had this whole campaign. I don't even know if it's still going, but this was a few years ago where they, all these were like silly commercials about like only men can drink it. And it was supposed to be kind of like satirical, but it still kind of played on these like gender, you know, stereotypes that we have. That, you know, it's not for women because only men who like chop down trees can drink it, or, you know, something like that. So that was kind of silly. So a lot of these ads are like older, and they're not trying to be, it's not satire. They're not trying to be funny in some way. It's just really kind of the way people thought. And so that's, I'm sorry, like, I don't know why the lighting got all weird, like, on this thing. I think I hit something on, okay, I don't know. I think it's better. Sorry, guys. I definitely fucked something up when I was messing with it. Okay, but we're 25 minutes into it. I'm not restarting. Okay, so look at slide 27. So a woman's best friend, and it's like cooking ware. So like, what does that say? Like, women are the ones who are supposed to be doing the cooking. So back to these gender roles, right? Slide 28. The chef does everything but cook. That's what wives are for. So obviously, like, multiple problems with this. One, obviously back, you can see this ad's clearly decades old, but this expectation that a lot of women weren't working, they weren't getting an education, they were staying at home being housewives, which obviously still, like, many choose to do, but it's definitely more of an option now. You have the option to doing that versus, you know, working full-time or part-time, like whatever, you know, with different mentality. But back then it was definitely more of the expectation that that's what was going to happen. But then also, like, think of, like, take it a little, like, a step deeper, that, well, men don't know how to cook, they're not expected to, and in reality, like, as adults, everyone should probably know how to cook food, you know. Okay, so slide 29. Ooh, this woman, before you even read the words, this woman, you're like, this woman looks, you know, she's got these big eyes, she's obviously, like, scared or nervous, she looks very childlike, and then it's like this new, you know, car or whatever, so like the mini automatic for simple driving. Like, this woman is just can't figure out how to shift, so it has to be super simplified for her because she's just stupid, you know. Okay, slide 31. Wow. So the picture, like, the visual on this is obviously, like, the woman's lower than the man. He's in this very, like, powerful position. She's, like, in a very, like, submissive position. Then it's like, show her it's a man's world. Like, this is an ad for ties. Okay. But then you might be thinking, well, okay, I get it. Like, but a lot of these are older ads, you know. It's not really like that anymore. I got some, like, more recent ones. So go to slide, and they get even more explicit. Go to slide 31. Oh my God. What does this have to do with clothing? Like dehumanizing women. Okay. Hypersexualized to sell clothing, like, no surprise. It gets worse. Like, you might be thinking, well, that's just, like, the angle, or that's just, you know, artistic. Like, I found some good ones. Look at slide 32. I'm personally offended by this, which, you know, doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. I can be offended or not offended by the law, but, like, looking at this, you should have, hopefully, male and female, you should have a reaction to this ad. So, like, obviously it's showing a man proposing to a woman, and this has somehow opened her legs. I don't even, it's so many bad things, like, about men and women in this, that women, that we, like, our sexual behavior is based on, like, money, that when we get gifts or money from men, that's going to then open a world of more sexual activity for that man and the woman. So, like, it's basically saying, like, that, well, one, like we talked about this before, that women aren't going to want, are going to be sexual just naturally, that we have to, like, there's an ulterior motive, that sex is transactional, and it almost kind of implies that any woman is a prostitute to some degree. It's so much wrong with this, you know. And then, of course, for the man, we could just pick this one apart. Let's move on though. Like, no, I want to say a lot, but let's just move on. Okay, so slide 33. Wonder Bra. Like, this was really popular when I was in like junior high. All my friends, like, I didn't need it. I developed very early, and when you're older, you look back on it and you're like, okay, like when you're young, it's hard. For any of you, females know, like when you develop before like your peer group, it can be difficult, but I remember a lot of my friends were like, we were like 13, 14, and they were like, I'm gonna get a Wonder Bra, like they needed cleavage. Well, one, before we even get to this ad, like that in itself is a problem. Like, why do we as women feel the need to show like in excess to show our breasts? That's somehow deemed to be more feminine. That's somehow deemed to be like an expectation that we want men to look at us. We want to have sex appeal. And obviously, if you're an adult, like that is your choice to do, and to varying degrees. But like I said, I remember being young, and it almost felt like a lot of it was marketed to us being like teenagers. Like, that's an issue. Like, that should not be your concern, male or female. Trying to, what's the word? Like, be concerned about whether you're sexually attractive. I don't know. It like, there are, I shouldn't say that. Like, there are levels and to this, there are multiple cultural layers to this that like are complex and difficult to kind of pick apart. That obviously we know biologically at puberty we are sexually mature, so like understandably this is the case. But when you start piling all these cultural expectations, and it's often skewed like this towards the women being the ones who are expected to perform the sexuality publicly in some way. What does that do to us as women as we continue to grow older? What does that do to our expectations we have about romantic relationships and sexual relationships? What does that do for men as well, that they might have expectations based on this? So there's a lot to pick apart. Okay. Slide 34. Oh, I didn't even talk about the slide. Slide 33. Okay, so back to slide 33, Wonder Bra. So she has this Wonder Bra on. She's got this, amazing cleavage, and she's like, I can't cook, but who cares? Well, first of all, like, a couple things wrong. One is, was there an expectation that you as a woman were supposed to be the one cooking? Like, we already talked about that in some of those other ads. Like, apparently there is that social expectation. But also she's saying, well, I'm beautiful, or I'm hypersexual, so it doesn't matter if I can do all these domestic things. So, like, there's just multiple layers to why this is, like, problematic. Okay, so slide 34. It's pear, and it says, this is no shape for a girl. You guys, right? Like, every woman, every man, like, we all are shaped differently, beautifully, unique. We could have a whole class about beauty standards and, in our culture. Oh my gosh, right? Slide 35. Another one, this one, first of all, she's naked. She's laying on the floor, looking at a shoe, and it says, keep her where she belongs. Apparently, hyper vulnerable is where she belongs, naked on the floor. These are just these expectations, these rules, many of them to women. Don't worry, guys, we're going to get to some of the ones for men in a minute. Okay, so slide 36, you'll see, no, I can't even read it. Every day is Mother's Day, and it shows this woman doing laundry. Like, is this the expectation, like, for this woman? It's expected that she's a mother, obviously, because she's an adult, so she must be a mother. And that she's doing all these domestic things, Okay, so go to slide 37. So even when you're looking at these ads, even for things that aren't even, like just like the previous one, that aren't even about motherhood, it's not like it's an ad for diapers or something, or for formula. This is just an ad for detergent, but it's still, we use this idea, because it's very romantic in some way. It's very, what's the word? Like reminiscent. It's very, there's another word I'm thinking of. I'll think of it later. Where we see this like, you know, mother and child or a baby. Like everyone loves babies, of course. Let's throw them in the ad too, because then we'll be able to sell this product more, you know. So, okay, slide 38. Mr. Clean, and it says, this Mother's Day, get back to the job that really matters. Now you could take this two different ways. When I first saw it, I was like, the job that really matters, she and her female child are cleaning. That's the job that really matters. But then you could take it as, well, because with Mr. Clean, they can clean so well really quickly, and then they can get back to like actually enjoying, you know, family time, or, you know, but that's not really what it's showing. So, and it's no surprise, like it's showing the woman who's in this, it's supposed to be depicted like maybe she's the mother because there's a child next to her, and the child is also appears to be a female, that they are doing the household cleaning. Okay, now let's kind of go in the opposite direction. So slide 39. So in all these previous ones, women are expected to be, you know, mothers. We're expected to be good at cleaning or cooking, very domestic stuff. But now look at the reverse. Like, what are the things kind of aimed at men? So here we have this ad for potatoes. So easy, a husband could do it. Like, this expectation that men are stupid. They're so simple-minded. They don't know how to do basic things. Like, even our food is foolproof for your simple mind, right? Like, it's just, as a man, you probably are offended by this. Like, what is this saying about you, you know? Slide 40. So this is, I took a screenshot. You probably remember these Doritos ads. I think I want to say it's like 2 or 3, 4 years ago, where this woman, she's like giving birth, and the husband's like in the hospital room with her, and he's just like eating his Doritos, and he's just like an idiot. That's what they are portraying him, at least in the video. And it's just like, all of these ads, like, men are just so simple-minded, and like they're not even really full adults, you know. And then so slide 40 is another one similar to this. I have this ad, I want to say this was like a Clorox ad, and I remember that this was a commercial, and the woman, she's like going to work for the day, and she's like, okay, honey, you got everything? And he's like, he's got the baby, and he's gonna take care of, like, you know, the grocery shopping and, like, you know, making lunch or something. And he's like, yeah, I got it. And then she comes back later, and he, like, apparently is just so stupid, he can't figure out how to change a diaper and make lunch. Like, he just, you know. So it's offensive, obviously, if you're a man. Like, you're like, I know how to freaking make lunch. I can, you know, wipe down the table and change a diaper and, you know, put the baby down for a nap. Like, that's not hard. I mean, well, like, it's hard, but, like, you know, multitasking with children. But whether you're male or female, there shouldn't be a difference, right? But this expectation, this man is just, you know, he just can't figure it out. And also this idea that the woman has to come in and save the day, which you might think, well, at first it's kind of empowering towards women, but also it's saying, now, women, you need to go back to these domestic things that only you are good at. Like, this one's just like, kind of like, there's a lot going on, male and female. Okay. Slide 42. Food. Food's a whole topic too. Like, what is the gendered expectation for eating, what types of food you're supposed to eat, whether you're a male or a female? That if you're a man, you're supposed to eat meat, right? Right. And if you're a woman, you're supposed to eat, you know, like salad. And no, you know, we all like, I love salad just because I love salad, but that's not all, obviously, you guys have seen what I look like. That's not all I eat, you know. I mean, I mentioned this before, like, I'm a vegan, I don't eat meat, but I definitely eat junk food. I still live my life. I love to cook and I love to bake, so I'm always, you know, eating, not always, I should say, but I make, probably at least once a week, I'll make, like, you know, homemade cookies or something, so I love to eat snacks. And I definitely like to indulge. I love pasta. And I think most women would say, like, I want to eat that, you know, the rich, delicious, greasy food, you know. Food is food, like, everyone loves food, right? Obviously, we all have our own, like, preferences for certain types, but this expectation that, you know, girls are eating, like, rabbit food and men are supposed to be eating meat all the time, like, no, of course. Oh, and this kind of reminds me of it. So years ago, I was in a relationship with someone who was also a vegan, and he, like, his parents and his grandparents gave him the hardest time about it, like, that, like, my family, it was never an issue at all. Like, they're not vegan, but they were like, okay, like, no big deal, you know. Family get-togethers were, you know, bring what you want, or, hey, Alicia, we happen to make this thing with margarine versus butter just for you, like, awesome, great thing. They were very accommodating. It was never an issue because it just wasn't. But for his family, it was always an issue, and they would give him a hard time about it, like, he wasn't really a man, that because he wasn't eating meat, there must be something wrong with him. maybe he was secretly gay because he didn't want to eat meat. And it was just like, what are you talking about? Like, none of those things are related in any way. And in fact, his grandfather had like 3 heart attacks. And so he was like, health-wise, this is probably the right move for me anyway. And you guys as my family understanding, like, maybe not understanding, but like their genetic, I should probably be a little extra careful with all of that. And, eating healthier in general is probably a good idea for everyone. And so just for him, it was just always this thing. And then also, like, there would be like other things. Like, I don't want, like, this is not going to be, online. I don't want to get too far into it. But I know they give him a hard time about a few things. Like, if I wasn't around, they would say, well, she's not around, you can eat meat. He's like, that's not he's like, first of all, that's not our relationship. She doesn't dictate anything to me. I make my own decisions. But also, like, you guys aren't respecting my decisions. And like I said, this gave him the hardest time about it. And I see that a lot. Like, people would say, like, oh, men aren't really men if they don't eat meat. It's like, those two things are so not related in any way at all. And so this gets back to this, like, what are these gendered expectations for you, whether you are a male or a female, Okay, slide 43, just a little bit more about this. So here you see this ad for Weight Watchers for men, and it's like, eat like a man, not like a rabbit. And it shows like a plate with meat and some vegetables, like potatoes and stuff. It's like this this idea that as a man, you have to be eating meat. You can be eating all these other food. And it's just like, yes, you as a male versus you, like an adult male versus an adult female, your caloric needs might be a little more, like, for example, on the average, let's say adult males might need more like 2,300 calories a day, and females might need more like 2,000 calories a day. So maybe there's a slight difference in your general caloric needs, or for any individual, you might have a deficiency in something, you might need to take a multivitamin for that or something. That's more about the individual. But this idea that men somehow need to eat meat, and also in contrast, like, do women not? Because that wouldn't make sense. It would make more sense if there were expectations, because we're all the same species, right? That we would probably need to eat similar foods. But also this, no surprise to you guys. And in fact, I think I mentioned this earlier on in the semester, that for millennials, it's something like, I think worldwide, like 12 to 13% of you are vegan or vegetarian. So I'm assuming at least a few of you in this class are probably vegan or vegetarian. So probably a lot of this isn't new to you, that the health implications of eating meat, the environmental implications of like factory farming, and like a lot of this we're seeing, like, I think a lot of the propaganda in like advertising, and also like things like milk. Maybe this was the thing for you guys when you were young, but for me it definitely was the whole like got milk advertisements, promoting this idea that you need milk for, like strong bones, with the calcium. In fact, what we're seeing, like, from the medical research, because now we have the long-term data on this, is that overconsumption of dairy can actually cause osteoporosis in later life. So it's like, we're seeing the actual, like, scientific research going into this, and it's like, it's not what we thought. A lot of this is just marketing, which, like, is no surprise to you guys, right? Okay. Okay, so moving on to slide 44. So looking into toys, so these gendered expectations of what toys you should be playing with. So here we have 2 girls, they're playing with the baby doll. One has a toy vacuum. And so you might be thinking, oh, it's just harmless, it's fun. I have that for my niece, or my kids have that. And like, in general, yes, toys are toys, like, have fun, play with whatever. But when you really start kind of looking at the way these are marketed, when you have this girl in this picture, what is she, like 6? When she's being trained at 6 years old to hold and play with a baby, no surprise that she's going to want to be a mother at like 15 years old. Like, that's going to be something in her mind. Like, it's not a surprise. But also, you see the reverse of this, like, little boys, like, oh, don't let them play with baby dolls because it's going to turn them gay. It's like, oh my God, I've heard this so many times. It's just so absurd. It's so ridiculous. It's so incorrect, right? And also, like, if playing with babies for little girls is going to maybe make them better mothers, wouldn't that also make the little boys better fathers, which is what you probably would want for your sons? I that's just my opinion. I'm not a parent, so that's just my opinion on that. But then, like, the toy vacuum, like, training her to be more, like, have these domestic responsibilities, Slide 45. Okay, so toy guns for boys, carpentry set. So obviously, like, we live in Nevada, and I'm assuming most of you probably have shot a gun or own, like, I'm a gun owner. I think I think it's very interesting. We see this dichotomy of like, oh, if you're a liberal or if you're a conservative or if you're like that, there is somehow this line. I feel like in Nevada it doesn't really matter. Like everyone has a gun, everyone loves to shoot. It's really, there's no line drawn, I think, in terms of like politically on this. That's just my take on that. So, but obviously I feel like maybe this has changed a little bit recently, but I feel like a lot of this is marketed more towards male children. Toy guns, playing in terms of like more violent activities. And if you watch that the documentary that I signed, the Mask We Live In, they talk about this. And then also like these things we see more men like later in life with certain jobs like carpentry. Obviously we know females can obviously do this job and many do, but it's still, in terms of the workforce, it's probably still skewed with more males. And so we see this being this is something that they're expected. This is something that we see being like ingrained in them even as children. Slide 46. Ooh, a couple of examples on this one, right? So the first one, there are two games, or back to back, or together, obviously being marketed towards males and females. The female, how to be gorgeous. The one for the males, how to be clever. So putting this emphasis like boys are smart, girls are not. For little girls, and this is for children, for little girls, how you look is the most important thing. And like this should not surprise any of you. Like this is something we got, our mothers got, their mothers got, probably even more so now, because social media and just everything's just like media's in your face about everything. That there is this expectation from when you're very young to how you look is part of your value as a person. Now this is true for everyone, but this shouldn't surprise you that it's definitely put on females way more than it is for males, that how you look is more important than being smart, than being successful in other ways, being a good person. How you look really is a huge part of your value, your worth as a person, which of course it should not be. Okay, so this other example on the bottom, so obviously geared towards males, the one's in blue, the one in female is pink, and it says my toolbox for the boy. Okay. But the one for female, my handbag. And it's just like the one with the tools, it's like got all these tools, like tools for like making things, being creative, being inventive. And the one for the girls is like sunglasses. It looks like something to do with her nails. Like it's all about like these superficial things. So even at a very young age, you're being trained like this is what the expectations are. It's just okay, going over to the side, the little bit like for infants, male versus female, the one says, I hate my thighs. Now you might be thinking, of course the baby can't read it. That's true. But the fact that this was even a thing and people probably found it funny and purchased this item, that thought would even be in their minds that this is something normalized, that women, we are constantly like, I hate my arms, I hate my butt, I hate my whatever, for all these, it's too big, it's too small. Like, we all do this, whether you're male or female. We all have like problems where like, we all have issues. Oh my God, we all have like body issues. Most people do to varying degrees, and that's probably fairly normal to an extent. Like everyone wants to look, their best. Everyone wants to look healthy and be healthy and feel healthy. But of course, we know everyone's going to look very different based on, genetics, based on like general health, based on, obviously the food you're eating for sure. But to put this on like children, especially this young, like it blows my mind. But in contrast to that, the little boys one's like, I'm super. Like these expectations that, these little boys are going to grow up to be, adventurous, and the little girl's just going to hate herself. Like it's just, And then of course the fourth one here. So we have these two toys. One's marketed towards the male children, and the other one's, oh my God, can I talk today? One is marketed towards the male children, and one is marketed towards the female children, obviously indicated by the blue and the pink packaging. And the blue one is junior doctor, like, oh great, like doctor, that's great. And then the pink one, little nurse. Like, first of all, we know nurses can be male and female, and doctors can be male and female, but we still have this expectation. Like when you hear someone say nurse, do you still imagine in your mind a female? Like, oh man, okay. slide 47. So this is just to show that we are seeing a lot of these like gendered toys. We are seeing kind of shift in this. So some of these are not from America, but we could probably pull some American examples as well. So here we have, you know, these like Nerf style guns. Got a male and a female in the ad. Obviously understanding everyone loves to shoot stuff, so whether you're a male or a female, like that's not a big deal. And then we have the one at the bottom, looks like some kind of art set. We've got a male and a female playing with it, making like beads and jewelry. So like obviously being creative and being artistic should be something, whether you're a male or female, like you should be doing. And then the third one, this little hairdresser toy set, it shows males and females in the ad. Like obviously that's a perfectly fine thing to do, you know, doing hair, being creative with hair, whether you're a child or even into adulthood, maybe that's something you enjoy doing, you know, making people feel good about themselves and how they look, being creative with hair and other, you know, related things. That's really, there shouldn't be an expectation that only females can do that or males shouldn't be allowed to. So seeing, you know, obviously when you're young, that stuff sticks with you. So when we see it with toys, that we're seeing this kind of shift in these gendered expectations is obviously a positive. Okay, so, and then just this last thing, there's a little video clip that I have on here for you to watch, just talking about the way we, like, in language, how for females and males, oftentimes the way we are expected to talk to other people is very different. And so go ahead and watch that clip. It's like, I don't know, like a minute long. You'll get an example of this. And then just the last slide, because I'm already at 50 minutes, I'll just say, this is just something, you know, I put on here as food for thought. Just based on these parts 1, 2, and 3, and especially this last one, what are just some other roles that you see assigned to males, assigned to females, whether they're, you know, children or adults? Like, what are some other things you can think of in your mind? Like, in my mind, I think of like a lot of the occupations we see. Like, what are I remember as an example when I was doing my undergrad years ago, I had a friend. So this wasn't my friend; it was a friend of my friend. But she said that her friend who was a male was going to college to do like early childhood education and wanted to be like a kindergarten teacher, but that he had decided to drop out of the program and pursue another thing, not because he had just changed his mind, but because everyone else in the courses were female, and that he felt that it would be weird. And I guess his backstory was something like, you know, he had been one of like many siblings. He'd been the older one. He kind of had helped, so to a certain degree, kind of raise the younger children. He loved children, and he wanted to, you know, be an educator. And so this seemed like the perfect fit for him, but he didn't feeling too weird about it. And which is sad, because this might have been a great teacher, you know, but we see this often, like that women are expected to be, you know, the ones who are doing babysitting or wanting to work with the younger kids. And if a male does want to work with children, then it's like creepy to some degree. It's like, oh, it shouldn't be, right? You know, so like I said, I could just ramble on about this for like another hour, but we're not going to do that because we're already this is a little longer than I wanted. Okay, so that's kind of it to wrap up, you know, parts 1, 2, and 3. This is part 3. And I feel like I could say so much more, and I'm sure you guys are thinking a lot in your heads and saying stuff out loud to the screen right now as you're watching this. I wanted to offer another extra credit at the end of this, because it seems like a handful of you like that, and I get to kind of see who's actually watching these videos to the very end. So why don't we say extra credit opportunity again on this last PowerPoint slide. So it says other roles that are assigned to men and women in Western culture. So just based on our culture, give me, and I'll say like, you know, 1 point each, up to 3. Give me just, you don't have to write a big long paragraph, just give me like, you know, like a phrase or something, a word, a sentence if you want, up to 3, and I'll give you 1 point each, of other roles or expectations or occupations or anything where you see that there is like, only men are allowed to do this, or only women are allowed to do this, or women should know how to do this, or men should know how to do this. We've talked about many in varying degrees, so just give me a few more examples. If you want to write a little, you can, but if you just give me like a phrase or a word, at least if it's clear that I know what you're talking about, then that'll be another extra credit opportunity. Okay, so we'll end this one, and I will see you guys on the next one.